The most successful organizations are the ones whose managers keep lines of communication open. They have the courage to listen to employees, to talk with employees about what they need to hear, and to explain difficult decisions. This course examines communication as a critical part of a manager's job. We consider the interpersonal aspects of communication, communication channels, persuasion, and listening, all affecting a manager's ability to communicate. Communication is the process by which information is exchanged and understood by two or more people, usually with the intent to influence or motivate behavior. Managers spend at least 80% of every working day in direct communication with others. In other words, 48 minutes of every hour is spent in meetings, on the telephone, communicating online, or talking informally while walking around. The other 20% of a manager's typical time is spent doing desk work, most of which is also communication in the form of reading and writing. Managers need to be communication champions. Managers gather important information from both inside and outside the organization and then distribute appropriate information to others who need it. Managers' communication is purpose-directed, in that it directs everyone's attention towards the vision, values, and desired goals of the team or organization and influences people to act in a way that will help to achieve those goals. Managers facilitate strategic conversations by using open communication, actively listening to others, asking questions, and using feedback for learning and change. Strategic conversation refers to people talking across boundaries and hierarchical levels about the team or organization's vision, critical strategic themes, and the values that help achieve important goals. Managers use many different methods to communicate depending on the purpose of the communication and the audience. Being a good communicator starts with appreciating how complex communication is and understanding the key elements of the communication process. Let's take a look. Many people think communication is simple and natural. After all, we communicate every day without thinking about it. In reality, though, human communication is complex and fraught with opportunities for misunderstanding. Communication is not just sending information, but sharing information in a planned way. A manager who has the ability to deliver rousing speeches or write brilliant commentary, but who doesn't know how to listen, is not an effective communicator. Planning is a key part of the communication process. A manager who wants to communicate with an employee encodes a thought or idea by selecting symbols, such as words, with which to compose a message. The message is the tangible formation of the thought or idea sent to the employee, and the channel is the medium by which the message is sent. The channel might be a telephone call, an email or text message, a formal report, or face-to-face conversation. You get the point. The employee then decodes the symbols to interpret the meaning of the message. Feedback occurs when the employee responds to a manager's communication with a return message. The nature of effective communication is cyclical in that the sender and receiver may exchange messages several times to achieve mutual understanding. Feedback enables a manager to determine whether the employee correctly interpreted the message. The potential for communication errors is why feedback is so important. Without feedback, the communication cycle is incomplete. Encoding and decoding sometimes can cause communication errors. Have you ever heard someone say, "But that's not what I meant"? Or have you wasted time or energy on misunderstood instructions? Individual differences, knowledge, values, attitudes, and backgrounds act as filters that may create noise when translating the symbols to meanings in the communication process. Surveys of managers show that they consider communication their most critical skill and one of their top responsibilities. Most managers realize, however, that they need to improve their communication effectiveness.
In the world of business, communication is everything. From making sure that everyone is on the same page, to motivating colleagues towards better productivity. Here are some reasons why effective communication is so important for management. Effective communication helps to enhance your problem-solving skills. Communicate and collaborate to address changes, resolve differences, and explore potential solutions. Managers who communicate effectively are better motivators and can more easily create the type of collaborative atmosphere that any business needs to survive. Effective communication helps people understand what they're supposed to do and why they're supposed to do it, which goes a long way towards increasing productivity. Today's workforce is becoming more globalized by the day, which can be challenging for managers who must work with diverse employees from different places and backgrounds. Communication skills work within the confines of this multicultural, multinational workforce to communicate and achieve the company's goals and objectives.
There are 5 basic approaches for effective communication as a manager. Employees who have worked their way up in the ranks to a leadership position likely got there because they were smart, could learn quickly, and were team players. Many of the skills needed to succeed in management are acquired during the climb, just in the daily workings of the company. But it is unlikely that many people in leadership were actually trained how to communicate as a manager. Clear messages and constructive feedback are not every leader's strongest suit. So let's take a look at some of the key features of effective communication in the workplace. First is be clear. Clarity is the most important part of any type of communication, whether it is leading a meeting, giving a speech, or talking to shareholders. Many employees complain that they cannot understand what their managers are saying because their messages are full of buzzwords and acronyms. When practicing how to communicate as a manager, it is vital that leaders use as little jargon as possible, or at least explain what the words mean at the beginning of the session. Effective communicators also think before they speak. A little calculation beforehand can keep managers on message and result in a clear statement of expectations. They have to finish each thought before they move on the next one, or they risk leaving their audience lost in the circles of thought. If everyone leaves the meeting looking dazed or confused, they will have a difficult time responding to the message they just heard. Second, be brief. Brevity is a virtue that successful communicators nurture. In order to keep statements short and keep a team engaged, a concise message is vital. Managers have to resist the urge to tell anecdotes or stories they feel are related, but not actually to be helpful. By staying on topic and avoiding tangents, there is a higher likelihood that employees will understand and be ready to take action. If it helps, managers can also ask team members to give a brief recap of what they understand to be the key outcomes of the discussion. Third, be positive. Even when upset or frustrated, managers have to stay calm and positive. Studies shows that negative messages have a quashing effect on how well communication is understood. People in leadership positions should not be condescending to their audiences, or they risk listeners tuning them out completely. Calm messages with positive tones are key when learning how to communicate as a manager. The discussion should not be about criticizing others, even the competition, but about positive ways to move forward. Fourth, be constructive. Managers who calls meetings with their team may be facing problem, or they might just have information to share. Regardless which is the case, focusing on reaching goals and not placing blame should be the objective of the message. Although examining what went wrong will surely have to be part of the discussion, it is not constructive to point fingers. The message should always be about presenting solutions in the future and creating actionable items to help the team avoid the same problems. This can lead to a discussion about other possible snafus and how to prepare from them. Again, staying on message is the best way to get through tough meetings. Lastly, be smart. A manager who tries to lead a team but doesn't know what they are talking about will not get much buy-in from employees. Managers must learn before they plan and think before they speak. They must also listen carefully to comments from team members without interrupting or planning their response. By taking others' comments in account, managers might even learn something new or be exposed to an issue they have not considered before. In addition to learning how to communicate as a manager, few people are trained in best practices for how to communicate as a manager. An employee might have a wealth of knowledge, an eye for detail, and all kinds of innovative ideas, but without effective communication skills, their valuable qualities might go unnoticed. By taking some time to master these 5 basic approaches to good communication, all managers can improve their leadership skills and build teams with better performance in the workplace. Manager communication has a very big impact on how employees feel about their jobs and about their company. Here are the 4 main reasons to improve manager communication. Employees' trust. Lack of trust, therefore, is a big problem that has a negative impact on business success, and improved manager communication is the best way to build trust in the workplace. Employee motivation. When employees feel like they are the part of daily company conversations and updates, they are more likely to be motivated to perform better at work and achieve their goals. The feeling of being left alone from important company happenings is one of the main reasons for low motivation and engagement levels in the workplace. With proper communication, managers can significantly improve their employees' motivation, which result in a higher level of engagement and productivity. Employee engagement. Good manager communication is a great way to boost your employee engagement. When employees are informed about important company updates and aligned with the company's vision and goals, they are more likely to feel engaged and stay longer with the company. Therefore, manager communication has a direct impact on employees' engagement. Employees' retention. Managers who focus on improving communication with and among their teams are much more likely to have lower employee turnover rates. Informed employees who have good relationships with their managers are more satisfied with their jobs and are much less likely to seek other career opportunities. Therefore, it is managers' job to keep employees in the loop and make sure that they have instant access to all important company informations. Now let's take a look on this video.
When the true leader speaks, things happen. There's a couple of myths in many organizations about this idea of communication. The first myth is this, that we need more communication, more information in the organization. We really don't. In most of our organizations, we have too much information. We have actually too much communication. What we need is more meaning. What we need is more purpose. The second myth is around communication as a leadership competency. Many of us think about leadership communication as a competency like strategic thinking or project management, innovation, and the like. Think of it as an important competency, but a competency nonetheless. In fact, it's not a competency. Most organizations put it in their top 2 or 3 competencies because they see its importance. But leadership communication is not a competency. It is your leadership. Everything you do as a leader is manifest through your communication. It is simply that important. Leadership and communication are synonymous. Now, management communication is fundamentally different. It's important, but fundamentally different. Managers communicate accurate and timely information to help people do their jobs and do their jobs better. Important work. Leaders communicate to get people to think and act differently and in concert, working together, aligned, committed. Leaders push people past the normal cynicism in organizations, the doubt and uncertainty that exists. Their voice gets people aligned, engaged, and committed. But the challenges leaders are up against in organizations today are enormous. Organizations are incredibly noisy places. Think about all the messages that are flying around organizations. So how can one voice, the leader's voice, your voice, be heard above the din of the crowd? It's not just about having good presentation skills. You know the skills, eye contact, modulating your voice, pacing your message, knowing your audience, tell them what you're going to tell them and tell them what you told them. These are all important skills, but not what it takes to be an effective leadership communicator. To be heard, really heard, leaders need to speak in 3 dimensions: personal, future, and story. Personal. All communication is personal. Whether or not you're ordering office supplies or describing corporate strategy, you need to be able to make a personal connection. At this moment, even through this video, I'm either connecting with you personally or I'm not. You are deciding to either let my words touch you or not. I need to make that connection with you. Leaders do this by talking about passions and principles. They do it by talking about sacrifice, loyalty, service, community, the things that speak to the part of ourselves that we hold most dear. Leaders also must speak the simple, easily recognizable truth that stands out from all the spin and positioning and half-truths that float around organizations. People are listening for that truth teller, and they'll make a personal connection with the person they believe is telling them the truth. The second dimension is the dimension of the future. The thing that distinguishes leadership communication is that all leadership communication needs to be an invitation to a tomorrow that is better than today. Think about all the great communication you hear from your leaders. The great leaders communicate about a tomorrow that is better than today in some way, and that message is woven through all of their communications. And the third dimension is story. All leaders, all great leaders, are storytellers. Storytelling is the oldest form of communication and continues to be the most important form today. Neuroscientists agree upon one thing. They agree that we listen, think, and organize our minds in stories. We cannot change until we have a new story to replace an existing one. The leader's job is to help us create a new, bigger story, both for us and for our organization. Many leaders simply try to create a grand story for their organizations, but this often falls on deaf ears. The leaders who really have an impact are those that create big stories, but big stories in which every one of us have a starring role. From the CEO to the receptionist, we all have a starring role. Think back on the great projects you've been part of, great organizations, great teams. It's very likely that there was a leader there who created a big story for your team, a big story for your organization, and made sure you had a starring role. So one voice, your voice, can make all the difference in the organization today. The leader's voice can be heard above the din of the crowd. We're all listening for it. We're straining to hear it. All of us who work within organizations are listening for that leader's voice. When the leader speaks, something inside us moves. It resonates with our deepest hopes and aspirations.
Thank you and good morning.